Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. Last episode, we talked about how confidence and purpose thrive when we make meaning in our everyday lives. Today, I want to go deeper into this mind-spirit foundation we've been building and tap into how worry steals our peace and purpose in the moment. I'm sure you can imagine how this zaps our self-worth and confidence. I hope sharing my own self-love secrets helps you on your own journey to nurturing your happiness, peace, and confidence. If you're tired of worry holding you back from living your best life, may this next episode encourage you to level up your self-love game. In today's episode, you'll get some insight into operating with worry versus concern. You'll hear how I maintain peace and confidence in life's storms, and you'll learn a few tricks to use self-love to reclaim peace and happiness. So worry itself is a thief in so many ways. So I want to start today by really probing beneath the surface of what this emotion does in our everyday interactions in life. First of all, worry misplaces our focus. So we get stuck in this vicious cycle of thinking what could go wrong or what could keep us from getting what we want in this particular moment. And this causes us to kind of obsess over things. It makes it hard for us to concentrate when we're obsessing about everything other than what's in this actual moment here. So just think about for a minute what we do when we put our mindset on everything other than what is in the actual situation itself. It also takes us out of the experience altogether. So it makes it kind of like this transactional thing. I was talking to somebody recently and I used that expression, is it transactional? And he said, what do you mean by that? What I'm saying when I say transactional, it means like, think about things in life that you do where you're actually completing a transaction. Like maybe you go to the store and you ring up some things, or you're being checked out at the register by a cashier and it's a transaction. So now you have to pay for your transaction. A lot of times we go through the motions because we live in such a cashless society. We swipe. And oftentimes we don't even look at the amount on the screen. We just keep swiping. We need it. We'll deal with the fact that we don't have the money or our cards are overdrawn when we reach that point, right? But transactional is more than just those transactions at checkout. Think about, all the different things that we do where there's some kind of exchange happening. And a lot of times that's like, it's just like checking it off a list. The thing that's being experienced itself in that moment, or the thing that's being focused on in that moment, is the actual transaction. Not what's happening outside of that transaction or what brought you together for that transaction. So a lot of times, I know a lot of people who go through the motions of these transactional interactions where they're there and they're for the sake of just checking it off a list, getting the Insta-perfect shot, for instance, and not actually enjoying the thing that they did, that they went to this great length to get there, to get the photo op to begin with. They think that getting the photo op is the actual thing. So it becomes this transactional thing where the focus is on saying, I did this thing. The picture is the evidence. Saying, I did this thing, I've accomplished this thing. But actually, so many of those things, the real purpose is to get to these places and actually enjoy them and enjoy them with other people. So to be in the company of people that you like to spend time with, enjoying these particular things. But instead we get kind of stuck in these transactional types of interactions. Well, when we operate with worry, we kind of put ourselves in that same kind of a mindset where we're just going through the motions, being in the experience, but because our worry puts us outside of the actual experience itself, we can say, check mark, that came off of the list, but we really didn't get what we should have gotten, all those good things that we should have gotten out of the experience. We miss out on those things. it puts us on the defense. So a lot of times when you think about what worry does in a moment is it gets us into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that makes us edgy, irritable, and quick to anger for starters. So I'm sure you can relate to that in that moment where you're so focused on your worry or you're so lost in worry that you're irritable and agitated and edgy and the littlest things set you off and you're kind of like, probably sometimes, why the heck am I acting this way? This is supposed to be this thing that I'm here to enjoy and have fun with, and here I am like just in a funk and in a bad mood. Well, worry's probably at the root of that for you. Worry also keeps us trapped in a living nightmare. Interestingly, nightmares are where our subconscious wrestles with things that we don't understand or things that we're really trying to work out. It's a place where trauma, fear, stress, unprocessed emotions are triggered. We tend to be empowered in some way to right what's wrong in our wakeful world, though. So it's this really interesting thing that happens in our dream world where when we're in a nightmare, sometimes we have these abilities or powers to overcome certain obstacles or certain oppressive forces. Research shows that worry is the strongest predictor of nightmares, which is a really interesting thing. So the worries that we carry in our wakeful world actually are something that we bring into our dream world. And the higher the level of the worry, the more intense the nightmares are. But when we think about how worry is this state of living in a wakeful nightmare, in this instance, we're in the real world. So realism keeps us often not empowered or not having those abilities or not even being able to perceive that we have certain abilities to overcome certain obstacles or to get through things at all. It often leaves us disconnected from that. Whereas in the actual nightmare, we tend to be empowered in some way to right what's wrong in our wakeful world. Worry is actually worse than the nightmare itself. My husband recently asked me, how do you maintain your peace and happiness? Like, you're always so full of joy. You don't let things get to you easily. So at first I kind of laughed when he asked me that because he is kind of my polar opposite in that regard. He worries about a lot of things. He lets a lot of things steal his peace and his joy. And he gets stressed out very easily about these things. So a lot of times, like there's a joke, I may have mentioned this last episode, where he's like, Jen, this just isn't living. And my kids used to have this joke that when we were sitting around the dinner table and my husband would go, Jen, this just isn't living. And so now they'll say, Jen, this is living, or Jen, this isn't living. That's how they measure a good moment or a bad moment. It's this kind of inside family joke, but it's such a ironic concept that I actually made a t-shirt that has this is living and this isn't living on the front and back of it. So if that's something that maybe speaks to you also, you can find a link to my Shopify storefront in the show notes below. But at any rate, I was thinking about how to respond to him in this moment because there's so many things that influence it. And then I started thinking about what I was already meditating on for this particular episode. And the first thing that I was thinking about was that I learned how to ground myself in peace in the midst of the storm. So even for my earlier years in my childhood, I really was self-reflective to a point. Like, obviously I had to get much more intentional and better about that. But I was self-reflective enough to know that my survival depended on not pretending everything was just beautiful and perfect, but just not letting certain things steal my peace or my joy. Because if I did that, and I learned this is something we have to think about, self-reflection. I learned that when I did that, everything sucked. So the experience itself sucked, and everything that followed out of that sucked. Like, everything in life felt awful and hopeless if I allowed these things to steal my peace and joy. So at a very young age, I started to cultivate this kind of mindset that was, listen, you can ground yourself in peace. So you do not have to understand how things are going to completely play out. You don't even have to understand where the peace comes from, why it comes from that place. Like, now I realize it's a very supernatural thing and it comes from another worldly place. But When you think about our reactions in a storm, this is a great analogy. Our first reaction is we want to survive it and we want to come out intact. So when you think about this analogy, you think about scanning the area, like what do I have at my disposal? What can help us? What will get us out of here? What will work? What can I convert? Where's the exits? All those different survival things. Where is shelter? All the different things depending on the type of storm that it is. And something interesting began to happen over time is that when I would self-reflect back, I would also recognize and learn from what didn't work. So I've talked about this in previous episodes about how we can learn as much, if not more sometimes, about what didn't work for us or what doesn't work in certain situations or certain environments. One of the first things that I started to learn at a really young age is what did panic and worry actually help? They don't really help anything. So right there, at a really basic foundational level, I learned that worry does not help. It actually just makes us lose things. Like we lose our peace and our joy, for starters. But another interesting thing, when I was thinking about this podcast, it causes us to lose control. Did I get your attention? Because I know worry and control go hand in hand. So if you're a perfectionist, then I'm speaking your language right now. So think about that. Worry makes us lose control. There are things that we can and can't control anyway. We can't control people or situations or environments. Sometimes we can moderate certain things and we can gain back certain control, or we can get a handle or manage certain things, but we can't control them outright because we're not the one in the power in these certain situations or in other individuals. We can control how we think about them and how we respond to them. So self-love begins with intentional self-reflection that goes back through all these things that I just went through with you, that we go through, like what works, what doesn't work. We self-reflect, like if I operate in worry, it's going to provoke fear and it's going to get me in this state of lost control. And it's going to maybe trap me in a state of panic and all the things that come out of panic, desperate types of interactions. We have desperate thoughts that lead to desperate actions and desperate reactions. And it's all this negative energy. It's like creating a storm within the storm at that point. So this is where worry and concern come into play. These are two words that are often interchanged in sentences, but they mean different things. Worry channels anxiety and heightens our fear, while concern channels focus and care. Worry leads to feelings of perceived failure and doom, and concern leads to a belief that if we focus on the right things here, things will work out or be okay down the road or in the very near future. So this kind of makes me go back to something I just mentioned about how my husband kind of gets stuck in a state of worry, and I'm kind of operating by being in a state of concern. So where I care about and I'm focused on those types of things, but I'm not allowing a spirit of fear or a spirit of hopelessness to kind of come in and get me chasing my tail in patterns of panic. Something I was telling my husband in this conversation when he asked me that, I was thinking about the biblical reference that God does not give us a spirit of fear, but he gives us a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. And then I can't help also thinking about the parables about not knowing the hour when God will come back, but to have the oil in our lamps ready and to have our affairs in order. And so that's kind of like the difference between like worry. Like worry keeps us in a state of fear and focused on the wrong things, and we can't control it. Like that worry is still not going to tell us what that hour is going to be. Whereas concern on the other side kind of works into this being a good steward of things. So getting our affairs in order, which includes getting our thinking in order, and just being ready for these things to just manifest themselves in our lives. And it's here at this crossroad where worry and concern intersect that confidence is impacted one way or the other. So many things we talk about on this show are centered on confidence. Confidence might not be what you think it is. It's not knowing everything and having it all figured out. It's not developed or maintained by never trying or failing. It's believing you can and will figure it out and then acting accordingly. Confidence grows by knowing that whatever comes our way, we'll handle it, and understanding this is truth from prior experience showing us. Confidence is cultivated by handling and dealing with things, not by avoiding them. It is shaped by two emotions, belief and disbelief. This is where the worry mindset comes in. Imagine you're standing on a platform in a train station between two train tracks. These sets of tracks are going in completely opposite directions. I love this analogy. I'm actually borrowing it from Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants. I teach this story in a lot of my different classes, and I use it with some of my coaching students as well, because it's an amazing metaphor when we're trying to consider two different mindsets or two different directions that our life could take, and how our life or our thinking or whatever it is we're trying to put here to juxtapose against this metaphor can take us in two completely different directions. So I want you to imagine that you're standing on this platform. There's these two sets of tracks that are going in opposite directions. One is taking you closer to your belief or a spirit of operating in belief, and the other one is taking you closer to the spirit of disbelief, and it's taking you completely farther and farther away from the person and place that you're in right now, in this moment. So I don't have to go much into detail there. You can imagine that if you continue on this train that's taking you farther and farther into your disbelief, then that's going to be taking you not only farther from where you started, it's going to be radically farther from where you hope to go. In life, we continue to progress or regress in certain areas, or we stagnate. So you could find yourself kind of like, I'm not getting on the train. And that's another third option too, is where you sit and you're like, I'm not getting on the train. I know so many people, they don't get on the train. But here I'm saying, just imagine what happens when we get on one train or the other. So you can imagine the more you travel in belief, how much healthier your mindset and that spirit-mind connection is going to thrive in that scenario, versus if you're operating in this disbelief and this worry mindset, how that is going to lead you in this other direction. So something else I didn't mention here was when we operate with worry, it doesn't just affect our mind-spirit connection, it also really affects our physical health. So when you think about like that idiom, worried sick, it comes from this reality that when we worry, we do make our body physically ill as well. Research shows all these different types of negative things that happen to all of our organs, but it also creates all kind of bad chemical reactions in our body, producing the wrong types of hormones, for instance. So cortisol levels are increased by the stress hormones. That maybe you've had that experience where you even start to feel like the nausea in your stomach is really upset, and it makes you feel like you have the flu, like it's just awful, and all the symptoms that come along with it. And I can remember going back even into my childhood that when I allowed that kind of worry to come in, it would definitely make me sick that way. And so I think another survival skill was to try to be like, okay, there's got to be a better way to get a handle on my emotions, because I can't afford to be sick like this, or I don't want to be sick like this. And so I found myself, especially when I was a teenager and going into my young adult years, really trying to get a handle on that. And every once in a while, if I start to allow worry to come in, it immediately makes me physically ill also. So it doesn't just wreak havoc on our mind and on our spiritual selves, it also wreaks havoc on our physical well-being and health also. What if the real meaning of success, something else we talk about a lot on this show, has less to do with what we accomplish as we strive toward fulfilling our goals and purpose, and more to do with our attitude and actions as we pursue these things? So my challenge to you is, why not find ways to appreciate what is going well or what is going right or as expected, and find ways to enjoy your experiences out of this mindset? So that is my self-love hack number 1, is to just put yourself in this mindset where you are aware of the things that are going right. And maybe in that awareness, You're also maybe adjusting if things aren't going. Again, you have some control over manipulating your behaviors or taking a few steps back, bringing something else in, but not getting stuck on just dwelling on the things that aren't going wrong or the things that maybe you didn't orchestrate the way you wanted to, or you didn't act or say what you hoped you wanted to say. Like, obviously come back, be forgiving. That's another self-love hack, is be forgiving when you're self-reflecting on, oh, I didn't like the way I acted or reacted in that situation. And then make peace with that and say, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to act that way anymore. But the other thing I want you to think about is, why not channel deeper into this care and concern concept? That is self-love hack number 2. When our compassion and empathy come from this place of care, we do thrive. And care shows our commitment to, number 1, quality interactions and outcomes, 2, good stewardship in our life matters and affairs, and number 3, loving ourselves as we love others. And we are really supposed to do that. And a lot of times our worry comes from this place of feeling like we're going to get rejected if things don't go exactly the way we want to, or we won't reach those places of success that we ultimately crave and desire, or achieving those goals, or, just having those milestone moments in our personal life, or maybe our career, or whatever it is. Sometimes we struggle to love ourselves as we love others. Sometimes we'll put ourselves aside, or we won't consider our own reactions or our own needs in a situation. So then worry can have us compromising our self-love walk and, keep us stuck in those patterns of being more concerned about not being rejected or not being misperceived or misunderstood. And it's a really dangerous cycle to get stuck in. So over the next week, I invite you to self-reflect on minimizing worry as you try these 2 life hacks. So just try these 2 things. Try really meditating on what is going well and what are the points of enjoyment that you had in the experience. And then also, be thinking about, how does care inform concern and supersede worry? So if we just focus on the care and the concern aspect and not about worrying and stressing about how things are going to play out, what will happen if we open our mindset to operating in these particular ways? How might things change for you when you replace this worry with a concern and gratitude mindset? How will these moments of breakthrough feel with a new attitude and actions that allow you to enjoy the journey, even when things don't go exactly as planned or desired? I really hope that these things spoke to you today, and they're really just opening up your thinking to new ways of approaching things and minimizing or completely cutting out that worry mindset and opening you up to another way of experiencing life through a self-love walk. I'm excited to see where things go for you this week. Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. If you haven't already, consider joining my Facebook group of women just like you, the Restore Your Inner Warrior Sisterhood. Here's a safe space to get tips, share stories, and find community support. And if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. As you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Saturday. Ciao.